You may be prepared, but there are more people who aren't. And so be very careful with who you share and what you share. The last place anybody listening to this podcast want to be is where everyone else is in a panic.
If anybody believes that, I feel bad for you. Hello, and welcome to Geisinger Unfiltered. Thank you so much for joining us today for a special episode where I'm going to bring on my extremely good friend and ally, Steve Quayle, who many say, I would say there's no argument against this, started the prepper movement. How long ago, Steve, did you start beseeching everyone out there to get ready for the coming trouble?
Probably almost 4.5 decades. And by the way, I didn't start it, but I was one of the ones that took it nationally. I was one of probably 4 people. You know, there were my predecessors, but they didn't obviously have talk radio programs. They didn't have when we got the internet podcasts. So I guess thanks to Art Bell, Coast to Coast,
Yes,
and other big shows I was on. And before that, I did a newsletter called Security and Survival Chronicles. But obviously, with the advent of the internet, it made it a lot easier.
Well, I mean, that's great that you brought up Coast to Coast AM. I mean, I don't know. How many times do you feel like you've been on Coast to Coast now?
Dozens.
Dozens. Very good. Because I think if everybody out there will probably have heard of Coast to Coast unless they're living under a rock. But you've been on with Alex Jones a number of times, haven't you? Haven't you not?
Well, yeah, but I don't know what happened. But the last time I was on him, maybe 6 months ago, I don't know why, but he said to his producer, get him on next week, get him on. Well, he said that 4 times and I've never been on. So I kind of think, this is my opinion, that my presence on his interviews was problematic to someone.
I see. I see. We've always wondered. I sort of want to be a big fan of his, just like a couple other public figures that I know, but I've always wondered about controlled opposition and that kind of thing. But one more tidbit about you and I is we did something in Branson called the True Legends conferences in 17, 18, 19 before they rolled out COVID. But Steve, those were Branson's biggest events 3 years in a row. 3,000 in attendance at the Mansion Theater for conspiracy faith-based conference. What's your favorite memory or some of your memories from the True Legends conferences in Branson?
Well, I think the favorite memory was, number one, some of the guests we've had, and then some of them weren't so great. But I think the thing is that most people wouldn't know this, but I had more people on the virtual conference than I have people who are live in Branson, because it was after COVID. And, our last presentation, probably 2020, I'm going to guess, was the last virtual conference. It had more people, 4,500 people.
One thing that I do remember from the True Legends is you had a 13-foot tall giant replica made that was in the lobby of the Mansion Theater, right? And I guess I always thought the 13 feet was just going to be sort of feel like a really big basketball player or something. No, 13 feet. I don't think people understand. Let's say that, the Joshua and Caleb spies in the Promised Land, they said that they were as grasshoppers in their sight, and they were as big as cedars. So I grew up on a homestead where we had cedar trees, and its average is 13, 20. You can get a whole bunch of different sizes of cedar trees, right? But if that's what they were experiencing, and they literally were crawling through brush and looked at some of those campsites, and there were 13-foot tall giants, people out there do not understand exactly the magnitude of a 13-foot tall being. And that's why God favored Joshua and Caleb so much, is they still came back and said, let's do this in the face of such a sight. But yeah, do you remember the statue, Steve? Well, I'm trying to get that into place, putting that in the lobby.
Well,
goodness.
Here's the deal. The Branson, as you know, had probably 60 to 80-foot ceilings, okay, from the lobby up. And I had to have a frame of reference so people could identify. It's not only how tall he was, the giant, it was how broad he was. And 6 fingers, 6 toes. It was done by one of the most famous sculptors, Mark Patrick. In addition to that, I had a giant skull based on the actual conquistadors recording, in the 1500s. And I took a rapier, which is a Spanish sword. It was 42 to 48 inches, and put it in the eye socket. Obviously, it was a replica. And the blade, the tip of the blade, Darrin, touched the back of the skull through the socket. So these things were big. Before the flood, there were 36-foot giants, and history records even bigger ones than that.
Right.
After the flood, I think most people don't understand the Genesis narrative. There were giants in those days before the flood and after the flood. Now, one of the dumbest questions I get, I'm sorry it's dumb, is this, well, how did the giants survive? Because the giants were all dead if they had breath of life. The hybrids were dead, but the fallen angels came sexually prior to the flood of Noah and then after the flood of Noah.
Right.
They did a big deed to the earth women twice. And so when Joshua and Caleb go into the promised land, Numbers 13:33, the word Nephilim is confused with the word Rephaim. After Numbers 13:30, you just quoted, were grasshoppers in their eyes,
Right.
And that's really critical because Joshua and Caleb were the ones that had the faith to go and fight these things, not in their own strength, but in the power of Almighty God. And they had the reference of, King David, obviously having fought the giant, and the timeline may be off, but what I'm saying is, for biblical reference, David fought Goliath. And Goliath was not, he was 7 feet tall and just an NBA player. Wrong. History records him as being one of the giants from Gath, Gath. And he also had 4 brothers, okay, that were also giants. So here's how bold David was in the power of God. He was jealous for the Lord of hosts, but he also, when he went and grabbed the stones for his sling, he grabbed 4 extra because David expected to take on, Goliath's brothers too.
If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to be plucked up from here and go over there, right? And so he must have had that kind of faith.
He must have had that kind of faith. But remember, he was chosen by God. Now, I want to share this too. God had him prepping as a shepherd to fight the lion and the bear with a sling. Those are pretty awesome creatures when you're a young teenager, as David was. But remember, everybody cowered in the face of Goliath and his threats. And David was jealous. The scripture records that David was jealous for the Lord God of heaven. And he came Goliath taunting, mocking God, And David said, you come against me with a sword and a spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord. And I think most people don't live in that world of faith. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have that kind of faith. No offense, if you try and move a tree out of your front yard to get a better view, it doesn't happen. So what I tell people, when God tells you to do something, that's when you hear the word of the Lord, which in the Bible is rhema. And that simply means God speaks a specific word to a specific person to go and do this. Now, what most people don't understand, when Joshua and Caleb went into the promised land, having to cross the River Jordan, there were 31 different, if you will,
strongholds.
Tribes, cities, and strongholds of giants. They were hybrids. They were totally hybrids. And it's interesting because God told them to kill every man, woman, child. And people have said to me, what kind of a God would do that? My answer is specifically, and it needs to be taught to people, because God was going to send the Messiah through the redeemed bloodlines of Noah. Had he not done that, there had been so much
genetic corruption.
Yeah, genetic corruption. So right now, Darrin, the hunt is on for some of the most evil men in history, or the most hybridized men in history. Gilgamesh, the most famous epic, Nimrod. And Nimrod, in the book of Genesis, it says he began to become what's the word? He began to become a Gibborim, okay? Gibborim is also another name for giants. So some kind of transmutational process, genetic modification was taking place in him, and he's the arrogant one that launched an arrow into heaven trying to kill God. Okay.
Well, Steve, and also, isn't it true that as shortly after it was reported that we found Gilgamesh's tomb, that the American and our allies invaded Iraq and carted out a lot of stuff? Are you in favor of thinking that's what some of those wars or conflicts were about, to get the genetic material to use on
Yes.
make our own super soldiers or something?
Yes. And you'll be interested, to the best of my knowledge, I was on the phone with Tom Horn late at night. Tom Horn was contacted by somebody who listened to he and I and was sending faxes in real time of images taken, because Iraq was so many hours ahead. And Tom was on the phone with me, sharing with me, wow, this is giant sarcophaguses. And the DNA of Gilgamesh was the most prized possession in the Iraqi war.
Right.
Okay?
And I think, as we know, the late, great Tom Horn then said after that got out, he heard some sort of click, 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 something weird happened, and then didn't his house catch on fire?
Yeah, it burned. And basically, they were...
Coincidentally, it burned, yes, after he revealed that.
No, it burned down, Darrin. And what he heard were poppers. Poppers, another term, for synchronized demolitions. And these were incendiary. Now, listen to this. I was on the phone talking to Tom, I think it was the day after. I was on the phone talking to him the day it all happened. And interestingly enough, within 30 minutes, the sheriff calls him. Okay.
Okay.
And the sheriff said, well, that sound you heard was the electrical discharges, and what burned down your house was a fire in your fuse box or your breaker box. That was a lie. But what I'm saying is, they had to have had real time, the intelligence agency, real time phone taps on us and everything else. The last thing they want out is Gilgamesh. And I'm told right now that it was stolen 3 times after the U.S. had it. And guess who's got it? According to what I was told, China. Guess who has the biggest super soldier program in the world? It's China.
And they have no morality there, so they'll torture 100,000 of their own citizens, men, in order to achieve what's really the Captain America scenario, right? Isn't that what they want to do? Take the Gilgamesh, take the Rephaim, Nephilim DNA, and infuse it into their own people, make these hybrid soldiers,
yes.
And who,
yes.
At all costs.
At all costs. And here's the thing. Most people have got to understand this. The reason why, one of the secondary reasons why, to release the COVID bioweaponized gain of function, and I said from the beginning it was a bioweapon, was to identify DNA from anybody that had to have their nose swabbed. Every one of those swabs contained DNA. But move fast forward into the Olympics, every Olympic athlete had to have his DNA taken both before the event and after the event, because they were after, Darrin, the most successful physical DNA to see what made it real. Now, I've been aware of the Super Soldier program for, decades. Actually, I started talking about that almost 25 years ago. And my former co-host, Hawk, who went to be with the Lord, a year ago, maybe now it's 2 years ago, but he and I would talk about the Super Soldier program. And I was contacted by a special operations general who listened to me, and he was a believer in Jesus. And he said, let me tell you what you need to know about the Super Soldier program. So, when you got a 4-star, and I got so tired of, I prayed. Here's what I prayed. I prayed, Lord, I'm so tired of hearing that's beyond my pay grade. Can you please bring someone into my life who has a pay grade that can't make that complaint? And God provided a marvelous tutor to me in real time. This isn't somebody that's retired. Well, my great grandfather had
No, he was boots on the ground, right? He was watching these
yeah,
programs
he was,
unfold.
yes, and he was also present when Gilgamesh was extracted. But the people that took Gilgamesh took him to a certain country. That country stole the DNA and everything they could get, the corpse, etc. And then they got outdealt by the Chinese. That's what I'm told. So here's what's important, Durham. We had the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme called Universal Soldier. That was more true than most people could even imagine. And you're a science fiction writer. You know that the Hollywood hellions, okay, that's what I call them, always leak the truth in so many ways. For instance, the first real presentation of a robot was Fritz Lang's Metropolis. It
Right.
happened to be a woman that, Madonna probably patterned her accoutrements above the waist after, but it was under, if most people would just look at it, you can look it up. And she went by various names, but in the film people called her Maria.
But
But
it was
here's
just to interrupt. It was said that the Luciferians sort of believe in karma-based theology, where they believe if they do not tell you what's going to happen, then bad things will come back on them. But if they do tell you, if they tell you, then and you choose to walk blindly forward, knowing what they've already shown you, then it's on you, and then they're excused from
well,
badness or
that's what I will say this. That's what the original temptation is ye shall know both good and evil. And God turned that on Lucifer and his minions. Most people don't realize 1/3 of the fallen angels that are innumerable are a lot of them, okay? And so we're told in the book of Revelation, I believe we're at the beginning of tribulations. The Great Tribulation counts of 42 months. Look, it's not 7 years. There's no 7-year tribulation. But evangelicals believe there is, and they can't. Well, Daniel's 70th week. Yeah, but in the book of Daniel, Messiah is cut off halfway through that 3.5 years. And God didn't give Lucifer, who became Satan, Satan means adversary, double the time to destroy humanity that he gave Jesus to redeem humanity. So this is really a spiritual warfare fight that most people are not skilled for. They read Ephesians 6, okay? And we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. All that stuff's invisible until we get to the book of Revelation, where it says, woe unto you inhabitants of the earth, for the devil has come down amongst you, knowing he has but a short time. So the devil's aware of time. It's interesting. He's existed out of time, but by his very rebellion to destroy humanity, because we're created in the image and likeness of God, but we're only restored to his likeness through Jesus Christ, because Adam was the first Adam. Sin entered the human race, but Jesus was the second Adam. So Jesus is a perfect example of not only our Redeemer, but God's changing the genetic rules, because you have the seed of Jesus, I have the seed of Jesus. And what really perplexed me about Christians taking the mark of the beast. Let me clarify something. The vaccination was not the mark of the beast. In order to have the mark of the beast has to be here. It cannot be involuntary. You have to know you are absolutely doing what
doing
you're
the
doing.
deal with the devil,
Yeah,
right?
doing the deal with the devil. And I got news for you. I wish it were Charlie Daniels, the devil went down to Georgia. But the thing that is, you can't outdeal, you can't outfiddle the devil with your own strength. So this is the crisis. The crisis is that giants weren't like Shrek, some big dumb oaf. They had fallen angel DNA. We just came up with something for our glyph report no one in the world ever knew. And we knew it from the translation of the glyphs. The glyphs are symbols, signs, and pictographs, petrographs. And the fallen angels have a language of their own.
Right. And
Now,
we, I got to do a plug for gen6.com right now. So that's GENSIX.com. If anybody out there does not know about that website yet, Steve has a few things to choose from that you absolutely need to be tuning into. And so him and I work on something called SQ Private Briefings. You can see that and sign up. That is a weekly newsletter. And also, Steve is talking about the glyph translation project, where him and his team are finding ancient glyphs and translating them to give us kind of a look into what the enemy is going to create these tribulations with. And Steve, that's a word you said a minute ago, tribulations. You and I talked off camera a little bit ago about one of your biggest concerns is this AI bubble in the stock market, that people are saying, that analysts are saying, that the AI has made sky-high valuations that are almost just false, fake, and there's a crash coming right now. Talk a little bit about what you were mentioning to me. What is happening in the stock market right now? Could that be the start of tribulations? What are they going to trigger here?
well, that's going to be the economic, if you will, atomic bomb within a hydrogen bomb, within a neutron bomb, within a quantum realm of explosions. I'll explain that. But what it simply means, Darrin, is that there's never been anything like it, and it's going to be problematic. So 80%, here's a number everyone should, I didn't know
Yes,
this.
everybody should pay attention right here. Go ahead, Steve.
80% of all stock market valuation are based on AI stocks, whether it's Nvidia, whether it's all the numerous companies that have come up, ChatGPT, Google. Google's the one that spent a lot of money, $250 billion, I think. Altogether, the AI company have spent a half a trillion. And when they looked for parallel dimensions, they found them, and it freaked them out. They shut down their quantum computing project to look for 12 dimensions. But what they got was they got ancient, you're going to love this, this is good for your novel, ancient cuneiform. They got mythological creatures, they got symbols, and they got feedback from the spirit world. Same thing that Hitler did in the Third Reich, because everything about the Third Reich, if you were in the SS, was all about occultism. And
And do you think this big push for AI now has tapped into all of these? They're discovering a lot more than helping you kind of, cheat on your home. Yeah, GPT. It's a lot more than helping you cheat on your homework, right? So they're stumbling into all sorts of other dimensions and entities that are talking from the other side.
Yes, and we identify the entities because, pun intended, we speak their language. We do it some symbols, and computers that we use are segregated from the internet, so they cannot poison our findings. Okay, but one of the interesting glyph responses was, "Oh, we see you have figured out our symbolic language," and they laughed. They said, "No one will believe you." But the glyph project has been so interesting, Darrin. When I started that project 3 years ago, I started with the premise: the fallen angels communicate with man. All the symbols throughout the world with some of the oldest sites in the world, like Göbekli Tepe, one of the oldest sites in the world. But all of them seem to be in Turkey and Asia Minor. And a good example of that, the seven churches of Revelation are all in Asia Minor, and even Satan's throne at that point was in Asia Minor, because Jesus said, "Where Satan sitteth," and that was in Pergamos. Some people pronounce it Pergamos. Just remember purgatory, except I'm not a Catholic. There's no such thing as purgatory. But Pergamos was where Satan's seat was. And in the Berlin Museum, the gigantopathy, that's a hard word for me to say, but the literal throne of Zeus, which was not he was the representation of Satan, was moved to the Berlin Museum. And it was even closed down for a couple of years. But when Barack Obama was coronated, they did that. People should find interesting, on a replica of that, and it looks like a temple and a bunch of steps, but all kinds of gigantic meaning fights, wars between the giants and humans, in Greek mythology, you have two groups. Basically, you have the Titans and you have the oh, good night, the Titans and the I'm looking for a word here. I
But they'll
apologize.
tap into whatever they can to get power. So
Yes.
whether
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah. And
locations or
I know the
replicas, and
word now.
yeah,
I know the word. Ladies and gentlemen, Darrin and I have to cover, 12,500 years worth of history on this
we're doing good. We're
podcast.
doing good so
Yeah,
far.
yeah, but there are two groups, the Titans and the Olympians. The Olympians would be like Hercules and others, the great heroes of Greek mythology, and the Titans were the fallen angels. And so what's interesting, Hitler used the thunderbolts of Zeus as symbols on the lapels in the shirt, whatever they're called.
The
They had,
SS symbol,
yeah,
right?
the SS did. And the Germans had a whole bunch, I mean, thousands of people that were called the Ahnenerbe. And again, I apologize to Germans, I'm not pronouncing it right, but that stood for, and that translates ancient ones. So that's what the Raiders of the Lost Ark first movie was about. And they're in Nepal looking for a famous archaeologist had the, if you will, the scepter, the head of a scepter that would point to the place where the ark was stored. Well, that's a lot of that's true because the Anunnaki, not concerning the ark, but they look for every religious artifact, including the spear of Longinus. Longinus was a Roman, that soldier that stuck his spear in the side of Jesus. They wanted that really bad. And then they also wanted the grail, the chalice of the Last Supper. And that was also one of the themes of one of
The
the,
third movie,
yeah,
the,
third movie.
the Crusade.
And listen, Steven Spielberg has tapped in to a lot of sources of real information. Tom Horn maintained that his sister was implanted by aliens and that her implant was taken to Spielberg. And these are words, Tom Horn said this, Steven Spielberg had the most numerous collection of alien implants.
I am
Now,
not surprised. I'm not surprised to hear that. I have one last question on the AI stock market bubble, though. Could they
sure.
be building it up this high, this far, as a deliberate trigger to like demolish the market so they can bring on a new digital currency or social credit system?
Yes, 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 and more yes. Ladies and gentlemen, the central bank digital currency is the greatest destroyer of humanity, of freedom, of financial choices where you can spend your money. And I'm telling everybody, get cash, resist, 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 because the Chinese social credit score that was being built in China by all the leading technocratic companies in the United States, whether it was Apple or anybody that moved over there, moved over to China to build their manufacturing. They did it, Darrin, because what they were doing was illegal. Now the social credit score is functioning in the background of all of our lives. And now with AI will be, in my opinion, the alien infestation, the alien interdiction of all human thought in order to destroy us.
Neuralink? What about Neuralink? Is that gonna, when are they gonna try to, are they gonna try to soften us up first with real ID and then go to digital ID and CBDCs
Well, all
and
of the above.
Neuralink?
Those who took the vaccine obviously had graphene. And ladies and gentlemen, there's science out there to prove that people who are vaccinated have different, if you will, receptors. Even some of them have time bomb sequence DNA genetics that can go off at any time. So, and you'll appreciate this, there's even 6G. And you know what they call that? You're going to love it. Genesis 6. And I maintain that that's the last version because even as we speak right now, Darrin, the stock market is so overbought and 80%. So take whatever the Dow opens up on Tuesday, or you can watch the Dow futures overseas, meaning Asia, and imagine the stock levels going down 80%. Imagine everybody who thought that AI would be the absolute road to riches for everyone. They're going to be deeply, deeply disturbed when it's not. And here's the thing. Let's say, Darrin, you say, "Hey, Steve, I know you didn't, so I'm just using it as an example. You bought 100 Bitcoins at, let's say, $1,000 a piece, and this is all not real. This is only for illustration purposes, and you spent $100,000. Well, now if you multiply 100 times 100,000 per Bitcoin, you get a pretty big return on your investment. But what I'm saying is, what happens when all of these digital currency explosive capital gains are there, and you're told you cannot access your account until you have the universal ID? And remember, in the book of Revelation, this is why this AI, this is why the stock market crash. You asked a very important question. Yes, it is all orchestrated by Lucifer, and AI is designed to take the financial system that now exists and destroy it, so people become very disheartened, and then they just springboard into, well, wait, we've got more good news.
Hegelian dialectic, right? Create the problem, disaster, and calamity that inevitably pushes everyone towards the solution that you desire, which is sign on to the system of the beast, right?
Right. And I think what everyone needs to understand, Satan's ultimate goal is the extinction, annihilation, and genocide of the human race. And if you put those together, age, and we're at the end of the age, and I think what I'm not trying to be clever, what I'm trying to tell everyone is that if you get rid of, let's say, 2/3 of the Earth's population, that frees up a lot of energy and resources for all the grubby grub masters, all the technocrats, all the people that don't want to just, own $500 billion. They want to own everything. So we're now in the realm with AI and AI stocks where something like Skynet of Terminator will rise from the ashes. Now they've got components to Skynet. And if everybody remembers the ultimate goal of the robots, or the Terminator robots, I had one of those at Branson too, if you remember.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was very cool. By the way, that's for sale. Somebody wants to buy it.
Okay, out there, Geisinger Unfiltered audience, if you want your own Terminator statue that's life-size and very cool and scary, yeah, hit me up in the comments below. But right, yeah. So the goal of Skynet, and yeah, we ask our own AI character. We have Glitchy McBoltface that's on the show. He's just Chat GPT, but we ask him about Skynet and the Terminator movies all the time, and he doesn't necessarily deny that that's an inevitability. Of course, laughs it off and everything, but I mean that's what James Cameron was trying to warn us about. But Steve, I can't have you on the show and not ask something like this: that as we edge towards collapse, economic, political, what should believers out there or patriots, what should they be doing now to prepare both physically and spiritually? I mean, you're one of the guys who started the prepper movement. I mean, you know how close we are to the end. What do people need to do right now?
First of all, get their relationship right with Jesus. That simply means, people say, what do you mean by that? It means repent of your sin. It means to look to the Word of God. Jesus isn't a gate crasher. He has to be invited into your life. You have to repent, believe, and then you have to basically trust God to show you what to do. Look, we can do what we can do as humans, okay? But James, the brother of Jesus, said, if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who doesn't withhold. Okay, God wants us to have wisdom. There's so much knowledge, this, Darrin, from all the things you've written. There's so much understanding out there. But here's the thing: you've got to check the lies of the large language models, LLMs. When I hear somebody saying, well, there's not much left to scan. Oh, really? There's 865 miles of bookshelves in the Library of Congress. There's literally tens of millions of books. They can't scan that many because they physically have to be hand scanned. So what they're looking for is a controlled narrative. And that controlled narrative will lead to the aliens are our saviors, and that they're coming back. We can talk about, obviously, you
Oh,
know,
third three eye atlas or whatever the
yes,
big thing coming towards Earth. Oh, I'm just getting this, Margaret. It's slowing down, and then the whole,
yeah.
this object slows
Oh,
down by Earth, and then they can create whatever narrative they want. They'll have politicians meeting in every corner of the Earth, and everybody will know what it's about, and they'll let that prep us till our nerves settle, and then they'll say, "Oh, we're not alone, and we created you," right?
well, it's even worse than that. NASA just shut down all information coming from, as obviously 3i Atlas gets closer, and it left its extrasolar orbit, which just happened to intersect the former orbit of the planet Rahab. The Greeks called it Astra, which was between the orbit of Jupiter and the orbit of Mars. And that not only was, 3i Atlas, but Uma. I think, that was named for a Hawaiian term because, of where the asteroid was absolutely located first, Uma. So not only did 3i Atlas come into the former orbital plane of what would call the planet that was destroyed, it was called Rahab. And if you know what Rahab means, it means, a whore, and what was interesting is that the point of intersection of the planetary orbit was where Rahab's planet would have been, the planet Rahab, before God destroyed Lucifer's throne there. And my friend, the great friend, Greg Evenson, before he died, a week before he died, I don't think it was more than a week to 10 days, he was going to come on and tell me about what he saw on the surface of Mars. Now, most people think that Saturn, rocket technology is it. It isn't. And the point is that do you know what challenge coins are?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, challenge coin is a coin. Here's a coin. I'll just use this is a oh good night. This is a Mexican 1799 8 real coin. Okay,
All right.
a challenge coin would say if you're a beneficiary or a participant in an ultra black project, meaning something that's so far off the radar, the FBI doesn't know about it, CIA doesn't know about it. And if I'm sitting with you in a restaurant or you recognize me and you put your coin down, before you start talking, and the same coin I have, you have to have. And then the person you're talking to isn't a BSer. An image has to match, Darrin. And why this is critical, it's kind of like the old day in the spy novels where you used to have a dollar bill or $100 bill, and I won't tear it in half, but you tear it in half, and you've got your serial number on the front. You've got to be able to match the serial number in the corner and here, okay? So in essence, then I know that I'm talking to the person I talked to. Now that can be fake too, but for the sake of this conversation, the world of ultra black has existed since probably 1940 to 45. Okay, in Hitler's world with the Ahnenerbe, the SS, it kind of started there because everybody that's a member of the secret societies of the world believe that they have an answer, they have a truth, and that once you have their information, you become an initiate. Well, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about today is technology that is old as creation itself. And I'll tell you this, there's two periods I talk about: the pre-Adamic period, okay, Atlantis, Hyperborea, Lemuria, Shambhala, and places Three Dog Night talked about Shambhala, but also, the ancient cities that people don't know about that are only referenced in quote the mythological reference, Camelot, that's the most apparent one. But I think what most are missing in this is the revisionist history, just like the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian is the nemesis of true history. The Nemesis, they've covered up all the giants, they've covered up all the advanced technology. What most people don't understand, there were 47 incidents within a 10-year period after Roswell, okay? But Roswell, I'll use a pen, not the best example, but the pen, as I'm weaving back and forth, is Roswell. That's oh goodness, a hypnotist amulet. So in essence, they're telling you, look at Roswell, Corso's book, all of the different things out there. Not a person in the UAP or the UFO community doesn't always refer to Roswell. But why don't they refer to the other
50
crash?
other I've heard we have our own episode on crash retrievals, and I've heard it said that there's so many of these things being shot down that they fill up a football field somewhere in Mongolia, and it's kind of suspicious to me that we can get so many of them. It's almost like they want us to get this forbidden technology. It's Genesis 6 Part 2.
I'll tell you why it is. I'll tell you why it is. It was given to me by someone who has magic clearance. There's two groups, the Majestic 12, and people don't believe they exist. I can tell you firsthand they exist, and so could the gentleman that wrote what? Behold a Pale Horse.
William Cooper.
Yeah, he was murdered. Okay, he was murdered in cold blood. But here's the thing that everyone's missing, and I believe it's time to educate them. I said the Smithsonian is the greatest cover-upper. That they are absolutely the doorway to especially antiquity globally. They actually have, if you will, their own teams, that are licensed to kill if somebody turns over a giant skull or bone. It used to be in the Ohio River Valley. I've literally had listeners 20 years ago that made the mistake. They dug up a huge skeleton, 9+ feet. They went and told the postal authority, what should we do? Within hours, the team I'm talking about, you know what they call it? They don't call it the S team. That would maybe make too many of us think of 3 other letters, but no, they basically go secure this stuff, and depending on the eyewitnesses, in the old time, the men in black used to just kill people, okay? And then they moved to threatening people, and then they moved to, basically to the point we're at now, they can't cover up anymore, whether it's the aliens in Las Vegas, the aliens in Miami. Now, when I'm talking about aliens, I'm talking extra-dimensional entities, okay? EDE. Some people call them exobiotic entities.
But what the men in black are these Smithsonian people that show up when you have an artifact that gets reported in the paper or whatever, and all of a sudden they swoop in. Perhaps they have a checkbook as well as a threat. So, here's an unlimited resource because our government prints money out of thin air so they can give them anything. It's meaningless. Oh, and by the way, not only will we take this all back, but you'll find yourself dead if you ever report this again to anyone else.
Well, I know that from personal experience. I wasn't in Mexico. Jesse G., who ran the expeditions in Mexico, was basically contacted by a group that had, you're going to love it, a smaller version of an asteroid/alien craft. Jesse was driven around diesel for about 4 hours, blindfolded, trying to confuse his sense of direction, and brought to an area. And what was interesting, Popo, the famous volcano that now is in the news because flying saucers are entering it and exiting it, wanted Jesse to buy the craft for $1 million, okay? Well, Jesse called me and said, can you come up with $1 million real quick? I said, no, I can talk to some people, and they wanted $1 million. They wanted it in cash.
But you might have brought a lot of trouble on yourself by getting that artifact yourself, Steve. If that got out, wouldn't they have come for you and made you turn it over?
Of course they would, but I planned to beat that because we had turned over in the artifacts not only the control panel to know how all the weapons on board, this is a true story, the weapons on board worked and how to navigate it. Well, I'm not a techno expert, okay? I can barely handle my computer, but I got a hold of a very famous pilot, and, we were trying to put $1 million together. In the meantime, the 3 letters showed up that they were tracking us at all time, okay? When we were digging the artifacts, in Mexico, okay, we filmed it in real time, blah, blah, blah. but we actually got the translation of how to fly the craft off of the symbols that were on like a control panel. And what was interesting, if most people remember, there are shots, photographs, images that I think have since disappeared that showed all these symbols on supposedly the control panel from Area 51 and that crash. Let me tell you why these things crash. I didn't figure out. I said, man, they got advanced technology. Because the craft work on electrogravitics, they need real magnetic anomaly maps of the Earth in real time. Okay, so if the magnetic field shifts, well, they're en route or en route. I say en route. I think yeah,
Tomato,
whatever.
tomato. Yeah.
Yeah, potato, potato. The point is that they hit what's called a gravity well. And that's what happened to Roswell. And that's from somebody who had the clarification and clarification, the ability to tell me, and
Why
classification
didn't they kill Colonel Corso? How did he survive? Why didn't they just kill him for everything he revealed in their
because
books?
he didn't have enough evidence and they were able to destroy the narrative claiming it was a weather balloon, claiming it was this, claiming it was that. Okay, they had such a sophisticated control of all access to the newspapers and whatever radio. It's like it's no different today, Darrin. And now we got to talk about again 3i Atlas. Why, and I want to leave this question for the second part of the interview, why would NASA, NASA. I used to call that NASA. And my friend Gary Haven said to me, Steve, it's NASA. And I remember the Blues Brother, NASA Gone Funky, NASA, so I was up with NASA, but the acronym for NASA is never a straight answer. What are they so terrified of? I am told, and haven't seen them, that there are photographs of 3i Atlas that are so clear, it's obviously a ship, okay? A craft. And the size, here's what Jesse found in Mexico. I got to visit that again. The three letter agencies came in, gave $1 million, and they flew another craft in, C-130, I don't know what that was, but we missed a chance to buy a craft. You asked me, was I frightened? And not if I would have hit the weapons panel first, because I'm not kidding. I used to have a real sense of adventure, but unfortunately, I
Maybe
wish I
not
had.
that level. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
might be
yeah. No,
another
but
level.
here's the deal. Here's the deal.
Is
The
3i Atlas going to slow down and stop in this December? Or is this going to be the start of disclosure? Or is it going to stop
Yes,
here?
but it supposedly has been joined by 7 other craft. And then today, I believe this is on my website, stevequayle.com, Daniel Holdings posted a story talking about the telemetry signals coming from a fleet. FLEET of them, and that's exactly what Tom Horn was told at Mount Graham at the Lucifer telescope run by the Vatican. And the Mount Graham is one of the leading stargates in the world. It's one of the most 7 important.
And Father Malachi Martin mentioned that the Vatican knew of something important that was headed our way that would be of great importance in the coming decades. He was off on his timing a little bit because they were data gathering to see if humanity was ready or whatever deception that they're going to try to pull off. Maybe they think we're ready now. Do you think that I kind of always felt that there's going to be a great economic or World War III collapse before disclosure is finally done or whatever lies they're going to try to foist on humanity. If that's this December, I don't know, is there time for a great meltdown before they say we're not alone? What do you think?
Well, I think I'm with you, okay? I'm concurrent with. I believe the financial collapse will be so great and devastating. And by the way, already, people are saying there's too many parallels to 1929. These are some of the smartest financiers, billionaires.
Some guy just wrote a book called 1929 comparing exactly what we're going through to
But
what
here's
they
the
did
thing,
then.
Darrin. People are in the background questioning whether that's going to be Tuesday. Black Monday, the markets are closed. So it would be Black Tuesday, okay, or the day after. I can't tell people that's going to happen, but I will tell you this, that every single aspect of the financial market is manipulated by fallen angels. How do I know that? Because they openly gloat about it. Every single aspect of the different administrations, whether it's in Washington, D.C., Beijing, Peking, how do you say where the ducks were, the Chinese ducks were, Peking duck. But the bottom line is that we're now at a point where I don't believe World War III can be averted because one of the things that the President of the United States said the other day, he's on record as saying, he's going to give Zelensky the Tomahawk, cruise missiles. Russia responded. We're more than aware of Tomahawk cruise missiles. But what the press isn't telling anybody in the world is that, the Russia's already proactive. They're serious because Russia still has good intelligence gathering capabilities. It used to be the KGB, now it's the FSB. And, FSB, and in Washington, all there is federal BS, FBS, okay? This almost sounds like another fake network TV show or TV program. But what I think is important for people to realize, they will need to be panicked. They will need to be starving, whatever the remnants are, in order to buy the lie that the aliens are here to save us. The aliens are here to help us. It's the Prometheus factor, and it's absolutely the biggest seduction and lie. And Jesus said, if he didn't shorten the days, there'd be no flesh alive, and flesh alive. And he also stated that the deception would be so great if God didn't intervene, there would be no one who could hold on to the gospel. Lying signs and wonders are still signs and wonders.
Imagine if they let war break out. They let the stock market collapse first. Then there's war, rumors of wars. Who knows what's going to happen? And somehow out of that, they don't want to destroy their green. They're all tree huggers anyway. The earth's more important than people. They don't want the war to go on too long, so they stop it. Claim that the Three-Eye Atlas or whatever it is, they can only interview as a last resort clause. This was what's in my novel Zero G's. There's a 10-year global economic collapse. Maybe it's not going to be 10 years, but they come along to stop it so they can get all the glory for saving mankind. We have rules. We can't intervene unless you're going to extinct yourselves. So we're going to give you one chance. And what's that one chance? Well, yeah, mix our seed with your seed, and you can fix yourselves genetically. We'll help you to.
Oh, look, it's like Independence movie. Look, I'm a filmmaker. I have a degree in still photography, motion picture production. But one of the things I had to take multiple years was the history of film. Okay, and it started, with Birth of a Nation. Actually, it started before that with some of the like postcards and the postcard readers, and they speed it up, and it was how you got motion with multiple single photographs. But what was interesting to me is my genre I picked was science fiction from the beginning. And, it's fascinating to me to watch everything, whether it's Minority Report, whether it's Independence Day, where the women are up on top of the hotel or whatever the tall building is, welcoming the aliens, and I want to have your baby. Well, they're going to give you the baby of eternity. So what this is all, in my opinion, the most elaborate hoax, the greatest hypnosis, mass hypnosis, to destroy as many humans as possible. Darrin, people in Washington, they can't even add. If something goes, here you go, basic math. Well, we know that, they don't teach basic math in the inner cities. They just basically, here's how you fill out a welfare form. There is no ability of people to think. If I send something at you at 16,000 miles an hour, and you send something at me at 600 miles an hour, which country hits which country first?
We're not going to make it, right? The U.S. is not going to make it, is what you're saying.
The launch protocols. Look, I've never been in the military. I've never taken a dime from the government. I just want to say that to all my critics. Never. But the point is that we can talk until we're blue in the face, but people believe the United States has the biggest military in the world. We may spend the most money, but we don't get the bang for our buck. You're dealing with North Korea having hypersonics. You're dealing with Iran having hypersonics. Oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Iran's hypersonics are in Venezuela, along with two Russian nuclear bombers.
And also, Steve, if the puppet masters have decided that the U.S. is not going to survive what's coming for whatever reason, too many patriots here, too much of a thorn in their side, well, then they're just going to make our responses, our defense systems not even work. And they're just going to watch us turn to ash. And we'll be all, if we're alive, still wondering what happened to the great United States. But if they mess up the launch codes or the defense systems so that the patriots are taken out of the equation so that the beast system can rise, and the American patriot is still the biggest, obstacle to that, right?
Well, yeah, and Darrin, here is the major point. Being empirically objective, the Russians have the 100 megaton nuclear torpedo drones called the Poseidons, okay? The American military said, oh, we don't believe it. And the British said, we believe it. We're searching for them right now. And I think it's important for people to understand there's not one Cold War bunker, any place in the United States, deep underground military bunker, DUM for acronym, that can withstand a 25 megaton bunker buster, and that would be two 25 megatons. The first one digs the hole, and the second one finishes it off.
Right. So, Steve, let's wrap up here, and maybe we can even kind of give people some, I don't know, hope or final warnings. But what would you say to everyone out there if maybe they're a new generation, they don't know the greatness that Steve Quayle has been going on for decades? What would you just hand off to them? I mean, you've already said repent, get your lives right spiritually, but how would you close this up for?
Okay, physically. Today is Sunday. I'm looking at the calendar, October 12th. I would say this first and foremost, Darrin. In the prep movement, it was always a simple statement. 2 words. Food first, okay? Food. Non-perishable items. Canned, whatever you can get, canned.
Yep, canned goods. The good old, I mean, that's been in movies and books and people like yourself warning for the longest time. It's still a tried and true method. And as of right now, it's a miracle. We can actually literally still go out to the store and the shelves are full of these things. So get them while that you can. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and go to sporting goods stores, and they do have, meals, Peak, P-E-A-K, P-E-A-K. Yeah, I was going to say peak or key.
Like just add water type of MREs or whatever?
Yes. They're not MREs. MREs are pre-processed, cooked, and then,
doesn't sound very good, but the peak is what you're saying.
And generally, people get constipated, gas, and they're not that good. But the backpackers, you can get organic backpack. But the best place to get those are sporting goods stores.
It's just like Bass Pro Shop or Academy Sports or whatever they have.
Camping stores.
Peak, P-E-A-K. Get yourself some. Yeah, they're not a sponsor yet. Well, maybe they will be soon. But so just get your house in order, and as you and me always talk about, get a community.
Here's the other thing. People need to recognize that we have become lawless. Lawlessness means when each man does that which is right in his own sight. The last place you want to be, anybody wants to be, is in a supermarket panicked. And I will tell you this, the best authorities I know worldwide have stated that the order has been given and signed off by the present administration that all food is to be confiscated by and from the supermarkets. Aldi's announced on Friday that they're closing 2,500 stores for a day. Then I was told by someone in the grocery business, Costco is going to close too. And so are Aldi's, Costco, Trader Joe's, Safeway, Albertsons. They're going to close for a day. I was warning people because someone told me. I want to make this disclaimer. I'm only doing what I believe was my calling. I live in Montana, colder than blazes right now, and colder than we'd like to see it. But people need to recognize, get some cash. I can't tell you if something big's going to happen on Monday or Tuesday. I'll know in Monday's terms. And actually, remember, today, the gold and silver market are closed down tomorrow because it's Columbus How about this? In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and this Columbus Day might be when the powers that be put the screws to you, okay, to us, to
Good
all.
poem. Good poem. Waking up Tuesday morning and oops, okay, but everything's on hold. Nobody panic. We'll get the banking online. We'll get this online, the
Right.
stock
That's
markets,
another thing,
and it'll
Darren.
never come back up, will it?
No, it will never come back up. And that's what's so critical about people subscribing to the private briefings. And ladies and gentlemen, Darren is, because of his background, and this isn't flattering, it's just true. Because of his background in sci-fi and the things that sci-fi writers typically have are visionaries, okay? And you truly are. You see what's now and what could be, or you see what was and will be again. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. That which was will be again. So I think get money, a couple $100, get it out of the ATMs, and then on whatever you feel comfortable getting, but go
Well,
when
if you're into sporting goods stores too, you can exercise your Second Amendment right too, and
Yes.
and get some other supplies. We'll just leave it at that, and just get a plan together and get a community together. If I wouldn't, I would advise people not to be lone wolves in this either, because you can only hold out as in yourself in your house by yourself for so long. I mean, this is why The Walking Dead and so many of these programs show these forts where people are, there's teams of people that are on guard in different shifts. Unfortunately, I think it's going to come to that. So I would say try to understand where your neighbors are and talk to them about, well, I mean, those are difficult conversations to have, but you don't want to wait until, the internet is down to buy canned goods. Go to the sporting goods store, talk to your neighbors. And I think that's what it is. I'll give you the final word for this episode. Steve, thank you so much for coming on. People need to go to gen6.com, sign up for the SQ private briefings. Steve and I do those together. He's the brains behind it. I'm just the designer editor guy. But anyway, it's must-have, must-know information. Gen6.com, the SQ private briefings. Go there right after this and sign up for that. And Steve, give last word. What would you say to everybody out there to close this out?
Last word. Don't wait to see if what all the warnings are. Oh, I've heard the warnings for years. I've been one of the guys that's warned for years. Remember this. Here's a power statement, Darren. In rock and roll, you have a power chord, okay, or a riff that people remember. You may be prepared, but there are more people who aren't. And so be very careful with who you share and what you share. And I would say this to every husband: do not let your wives go to the grocery stores without accompanying them, because depending on how fast time speeds up concerning all this negative stuff, Darren, it's going to become more dangerous and more problematic. And for the record, I don't know the date yet, only God does, but when that day comes, that all of the food is off the shelves. I want to correct you. There's not a lot of food on a lot of shelves. There are people seeing like
The writing on the wall. It's already disappearing.
Yeah. So understand the last place you want to be. Here's a golden rule, and I think this is credited to me, but it's just common sense. The last place anybody listening to this podcast want to be is where everyone else is in a panic. You want to move prayerfully, ask God, what should I get? What should I do? And move carefully and say nothing. If you have mockers in your family, say nothing. If you have mockers in your social
Circle. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
circle, thank you. Well, what social circles are. They just keep running in circles and they never get anything done, and it's a priority. Your trip on the good ship Lollipop cruise is not a priority. Your children, your immediate family, and anybody who's in your family, you got to give them over to God's hands. I literally do this. God, they're in your hands. I can't do anything. God gave us free will. So Darren, thanks for doing your podcast, because
Nice. Well, thanks for coming on, Steve. Your wisdom and insight are invaluable, and I hope everybody pays attention. I mean, you're doing the best you can. You've done it for a long time, and so you've said it again, and so now they need to listen and do it, and so do I. Even I need to take my own advice. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Like and subscribe and share this out down below. If you have comments on everything we talked about, put those down there too. Thank you so much for joining us.